Welcome to Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things, the podcast show. I am your host, Carrie Roberts, and today's episode is in partnership with the Senior Care Services of Greater Princeton, located in New Jersey. And today we're here highlighting another extraordinary person in the New Jersey area, a local, in hopes to entertain, inspire you, and kind of open your mindset so you can live your own life and age gracefully. For those that don't know, Senior Care Services of Greater Princeton is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that engages volunteers to assist homebound seniors to age gracefully in place and to preserve their independence by providing transportation, food shopping, and friendly visits. And we also want to thank our wonderful sponsors for today's episode. We have Wells Fargo Advisors, Kathy and Mike Castellano, Mrs. G Appliances, Teris Event Planning and Consulting, Glen Eagle Advisors, and Surety Title Company. And today I want to introduce our fabulous guest, Miss Teri Cox. She is the president of Cox Communication Partners, LLC, as well as a consultant, life coach, author, and speaker. Welcome, Teri. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. I have to make one thing clear. I cannot fix your cable service. And I am not connected at all. It's Cox Communications Partners, LLC in Lawrenceville.
Yes, I love that. I know when we spoke, we had talked about that earlier. We want to make that very clear. You know, you have been in the healthcare space for a long time, and I'm always fascinated by the very beginning of people's stories and journeys. What kind of got you into the healthcare space? Where did your interest begin? Was this something, you know, as a teenager you thought you wanted to get into, or where did it all start?
Okay, well, first of all, I was good in the sciences as well as in English and in the arts. And biology, I was good in biology. I also was interested in health, in wellness. And when I learned about nutrition, I followed it ever since. So those kinds of things were of interest to me. Okay, but when I seriously got involved with it when I had a self-design major at the University of Pittsburgh, and then my first job outside after Pitt, I was the PR director for United Mental Health, the Mental Health Association for Western Pennsylvania. And that's when I learned about all the diseases from the from the diseases of the central nervous system, depression, anxiety, bipolar disease, and everything. And it's now called behavioral health, and there's a reason for that. Mental illness, there was a big stigma, and there was for many years, and they just changed that not too long ago. But I dealt with a lot of that, and that got me started. It also got me started. I learned an awful lot about how to do advocacy, right? Third-party advocacy. We'll talk about that a little later. And also creating win-win partnerships between the private sector and stakeholder groups like patients, caregivers, etc. And so that got me started. Okay, so move forward. I got my MBA in marketing at NYU, and while I was getting my MBA, I got an internship at Pfizer and worked in product research. So I did research in cardiovascular and in a couple of other areas. Also, I was the advocate and supportive caregiver of my parents. My dad had Alzheimer's. My mother had congestive heart failure. I had to get super quickly up to speed on all of those, every disease that affected everybody, so that I could help them and represent them. And so that's how I got involved.
But I want to stop you right there for a second, because I think it's interesting, Teri, because you went from kind of this like interest in nutrition, and then you went into mental health, and then it was kind of cardiovascular, and then Alzheimer's. And so you really kind of got into this whole gamut of healthcare, which I love that you're talking again about behavioral or mental health, because I think it's something that's equally as important as physical health. So when you were, I mean, we're talking about when you kind of went to get your MBA at that time. Was behavioral health something that people were talking a lot about? Because I feel like in the last few years, it's become much more prevalent than it was years ago.
It was not there yet, because this was in the mid to late 80s, and it was not there yet. And it was still considered mental illness. And I always wondered, because I was so concerned about health issues, why is the medical field, even insurance, so much more concerned about the body from the neck down, and not so much, they don't take seriously what's going on from here up. In the meantime, it all works together. And another thing that I learned when I worked at UMH is it's chemical imbalances. It's not someone's fault. So, but mental illness, there was such a stigma. And it really only changed, I'm going to say, I think in the last maybe 10 to 15 years. So back then, it still was considered mental illness. And again, you can be strong, you can lift yourself up by your bootstraps. No, sometimes your body chemistry doesn't allow that. And another problem is with mental illness, a lot of it is hereditary. So like depression ran in my family. Okay, so several people in my family got it. It wasn't their fault. Then they learned how to deal with it, took medication, and now they're under control. But the fact is, those things are real. And I think that what I'm happy about is the change in wellness and the emphasis in wellness and recognizing that what we eat, how we exercise, and everything we do is feeding our body. It's our body, our mind, and the spirit all goes together. All goes together.
Yes.
You can't ignore one or the other. And a lot of us are home. I know we're binge eating. I am too. Guilty as charged. I love my cookies and my sweets.
Yes.
But hey, let's face it, and chips and things. I love it, but I control it. And the thing is that everything in moderation. Alcohol, the same thing. But those are the kinds of things that what you take in and what you do to your body, what you do for your body, affects your health.
Yeah. And like you said, it's affecting your physical and mental health. And I would even say emotional health as well.
Absolutely. And they're all connected.
Oh, yeah, definitely. When you were caring for your parents that were kind of going through their own health issues, how old were you about at that time?
This was actually while I was in graduate school at NYU.
So how did that affect kind of your experience, what you studied, and your meaning behind how you wanted to help in healthcare?
Okay, well, I was overwhelmed because I was going to school full time, but I also was doing an internship at Pfizer and going back and forth to help support my mom while she was taking care of my dad who had Alzheimer's. Very challenging. And what often happens is that your family members, especially with someone with Alzheimer's, suddenly they disappear. Your friends, you really learn who your friends are because and they don't support the caregiver. It's all about the patient, or, they'll call my mother, how's dad, how's Meyer doing? He asking about my dad, but not what can I do for you? Okay. Mm-hmm. So I became sensitized to that role, and I was going back and forth. Okay. My dad died in 1990. My mother developed congestive heart failure, carried that on for a number of years. I was doing the same routine. Okay, and this was again before I started my company with my husband, Bill. We did that in 92. But my mom died my dad died in 90, so 98 is when my mom died. But during that period, she had it, and I was back and forth. I was her advocate, very strong advocate. She had good health care, but still. And then she had a stroke and she passed away. And 3 months after my mom died, my husband was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And he battled that for 11 years. So I was dealing with that role of caregiving and understanding the needs and the challenges of the caregiver. And fortunately, once we created our business, I also connected with a pharmaceutical company that was concerned about the whole area of caregiving, volunteerism, and seniors. And they had a product in clinical trials. They were looking for a great opportunity to meet the needs of seniors in some way, older adults in some way.
Yeah, and I want to just go back for a second, because I think, one of the things that you've done so well in your career, but obviously you've done it personally as well, is really this kind of element of advocacy in healthcare. I think a lot of people think of healthcare, especially now with what we're seeing with vaccines and that sort of thing, that it's just kind of drug-based or medication-based. And a lot of your work kind of showcased, no, we can talk about the community and help one another. And I'd love for you to kind of talk about your journey, kind of how you've helped the healthcare industry do that. I mean, obviously, a lot of your personal experience is what kind of pushed into this professional experience. But can you talk about the importance of advocacy in healthcare and the type of work that you did?
Well, first of all, I learned about it early on through United Mental Health. So that was my foundation. And I also did a lot of volunteering when my husband was trying to quit smoking. I was trained in smoking cessation with the American Cancer Society. And then I was asked to lead the Tobacco Control Task Force. And I was asked to serve on the board of directors. And I was steeped in advocacy. And we were trying to get the Clean Indoor Air Act passed in New Jersey. Now, we also were able to get support from pharmaceutical companies that had the chewing gum, or they had products that supported the smoker who was trying to quit, the patch. And there are a lot of different products, but they helped and they sponsored, because again, it's finding the common ground between the private sector and stakeholders, patient groups, smokers, caregivers. And that's what I've always tried to do. And I've recognized that in some cases, organizations are not aligned with the pharmaceutical industry, and that's understandable. But I've successfully, for example, worked with AARP on 2 projects because I know the rules. I know the mutual respect. It's ethical. You don't send somebody a check and say, get them to do that's what people think is done. That isn't how it works at all. It's respectful. The 2 boards, sometimes representatives have to meet, the top level people have to meet, the marketing teams have to meet, but there has to be agreement on what's doable in order to meet an objective that works for both the company and the stakeholder group. Okay, I'm just going to grab a sip of water.
Yeah,
this is my asthma season, so if I start
worries.
coughing, right, I do not have COVID. I do not have COVID.
Anyway, I
yeah.
think you're right. What you're saying, I mean, this is challenging in anything, but I think in healthcare, definitely. How did you kind of find a common ground? How did you get everybody to be on the same page when everybody has different wants and needs?
Okay, well, that's I think one of my big strengths is I have an intuitive sense, and I listen to everybody. And one of my things that my husband used to say to me, and I'm not digressing too much, but he would always say, after a meeting, I would remember, this one said this one's not going to work, this one's good, this one's a support, this one. How did you get all that? That's what I listen, and then I absorb, and I recognize in my head, I'm thinking, that's an opportunity. They agree on this part. They don't agree on that part. Okay. And then what I do is, after I get all the insight, then I put it together and put a proposal together that I know is going to work, because I already know the biases and the limits, and I respect them. And I know that all the players respect each other, and they want to work together and find a way. So we stay out of the areas that don't work and find the ways that do work. But mainly it's about a common goal, a common objective to make a difference, to make a lasting difference for others, for constituents, for patients, for end users, for clients, for whatever. I'm sorry if my voice is a little bit, but anyway, but that's really the key. And the thing is, it's beautiful, because I feel like it's a grand orchestration, but I'm not manipulating anything. All I'm doing is listening and zeroing in on what I know will work. And it's just an intuitive gut thing that I have that works. And it's worked so well. And, I have to say that one thing the big agencies will say, and I'm not naming any, but they'll, or companies will say, Teri Cox can do this. How come you can't get, AARP to work with us? That kind of thing. Well, it's because I listen, and I take the time, and I'm patient, and then I carve out and find. And I also get agreement. What I'll say is, what I see here, what I hear is, and I'll put the feedback. And then I'll say, it sounds like you all agree on blank. And I get a little fine tuning going on. Then we have a purpose. Then we have a goal. We can do some common messaging together.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So then it comes together, and it's worked beautifully. It's worked.
Yeah. And I just want to say, it's funny because when you say that, It sounds simple, but it's not. And it definitely takes the right type of person. And I know you have that big red book next to you, which I want you to share, because one of the many great things that you've done, again, from an advocacy standpoint, I want you to kind of talk about that, kind of where that came from, how you built it, if you want to show it as well, since we are here on video.
Yeah, it's show and tell. I have it on the table.
We love show and tell. Yes.
But a caveat right now is it's not available anymore, but all of the material in it is now being used and it's disseminated, and the ripple effect is out there all over the place, not only in the United States, but in Japan as well. Okay, so here's my baby. This is my baby, and it's Caring to Help Others. Okay, and it's a training manual to prepare volunteers to assist caregivers of older adults. And I want to say, bingo. I lived it. My mother lived it. I knew that this was important. Okay, but how did the project come about? Is I had a client. I started to mention that I had a client that had a product in clinical trials, and they wanted to create a corporate, not a branded project, which is about a product, even though they were in clinical trials, but something that tied to their overall mission, where they could get the patient group, they could get volunteerism, they could get senior groups working together, they could get the Alzheimer's Association and others all working together. But they said, do you have any ideas about what we could do? And I said, well, why don't I do some research and reach out to the organizations? And there were 12 of them that I met with them personally, and I designed the questionnaire, which is what I often do with my clients. If we don't have the answers, we find them and I help them. And I interviewed them, and I kept hearing over and over again in various themes. It was basically, we need a comprehensive, user-friendly training program to train volunteers to support the needs of caregivers of chronically ill older adults. And I'm immersed in all of this with my family. And I'm going, oh my God, how wonderful would it be if they could do that? I said, I hope the company will do it. And I met with very senior level, this is C-level people, and we're around the table and everything. The good news is that the COO at that time, I won't mention him, but he's a dear friend, he championed the project because his father-in-law was living with them. His wife was taken care of. He says, we have to do this. We got to do this. Okay. So when I was interviewing these 12 organizations, I also asked them, if we got a project sponsored by this company, I couldn't even mention the company to them. They were concerned about, they didn't want them hearing from them directly. So I was very careful, but I said, if we could get sponsorship for this kind of a project, would you serve on the advisory council? 9 of them agreed. 9 of them. And it was I lived and breathed it. It was like giving birth to a baby, but it took 4 years. Okay? It took 4 years. And every quarter we met at either AARP, National Council on the Aging, but I have AARP, National Council on the Aging, the Alzheimer's Association, the National Alliance for Caregiving, National Family Caregivers Association, the Interfaith Caregivers Alliance. I mean, all these organizations, and they all showed up. They were all committed. Now, I would work on the first draft, share it with them. They shared it with their legal team, their medical team. We went through 3 iterations of drafting, and then we field tested it in the final version before we actually finalized it, but it was the final draft before we finalized into a publication. We field tested it for 6 months, and I recruited all of the interfaith caregiver centers and organizational. They had them all over the country. I had them. I recruited them, and they agreed to field test it. And I did the surveys for them too. They were all color coded and everything. And they field tested it. I got the feedback. We finalized it. We published it, and it was given free to all of the organizations. And we also had other organizations. All they had to do was apply for it. And that was in 2000, 2001. And then a couple of years later, they the company created a website. You could download it all for free. Now, unfortunately, it's not caringtohelpothers.com. It's not available anymore, but they carried it until the middle of 2018. So for many years, they had it available. But all of the organizations have incorporated this information in continuing programs. And the company continues to partner with the National Family Caregivers Association. So it just started at that time, and it's the ripple effect is all over the place. And it's also being used in, as I said, the information is out there in Japan too.
Which is, I mean, that's amazing. So again, I congratulate you. Can you share with us maybe a couple tips that are in there? Because I actually interviewed another woman who was a caregiver for her husband going through cancer. He's okay now, but she's in her 30s. So she's much younger. And she was having, one of the things she does too is trying to help support caregivers. Because just like you said, people are always asking about the person that's physically ill, but they're not asking about the person that's caring for them. And it's a huge burden. So what are some suggestions if somebody's watching or listening and they're going through this and they're a caregiver that you would give to them to either take care of themselves or maybe a sibling of that person could kind of help them?
And I'm not laughing. I'm laughing because because I remember my own personal experience. Okay. And I did everything wrong. That's why I'm also was able to do this and get the right information. I learned the hard way sometimes. My way of being, and this is the way of a lot of caregivers, is you're taking care of yourself last. Mm-hmm. You take care of the caregiver. You don't go to the doctor. Your back is killing you, but you're not exercising. You're not going to a chiropractor. You're not going to physical therapy, or you have whatever. You ignore things. Don't do that. Okay. What I'm going to say is, in order to be a truly successful caregiver, you have to care for yourself as well. I have stenosis in my upper spine because I had my company and I'm being a caregiver and I'm getting my, MBA and all. And the stress, my rheumatologist said, you carried the stress in your upper back probably for about 15 or 20 years. And that's why it's affecting me now. Mm. I've gone through physical therapy. When I first was diagnosed in 2005, I couldn't hold a glass. It fell out of my hands. Now I'm fine. I can hold, but I still do the exercises at home. But what I'm saying is that I ignored a lot. And it was, and if anything, I can say anything, the major advice I would give, please take time to take care of yourself. And I'm in touch now with friends I grew up with in Pittsburgh. I'm a Steelers fan. Yeah. And love those Steelers. And one is caring for her husband who has Alzheimer's. And I'm in touch with her and I'm helping her. And now, as a result, also, we've talked and she now has support. And she's told me she was able to get support caregivers to come in, friendly visitors, so she gets some time for herself. And that's so critical. That's another thing, pamper yourself. Take time for a massage. Ask friends and family if they will help. If you have siblings, ask them to help. But if they don't, and don't be surprised, because people have their limits, emotional limits, especially when it's something like Alzheimer's. A lot of people are uncomfortable. It's not their fault. But what you do is it's hard to ask. And I'm always the one doing and supporting. I'm in the process now where I have to ask, and it's like awkward for me. But the fact is that you can't do everything yourself, and the caregiver needs support. So and let me say, the churches, hospitals, caregiver organizations like Interfaith Caregivers Alliance and others, National Family Caregivers, even they'll do referrals, and some of these services are free. You don't have to do it all by yourself, and you can get someone to clean, or maybe they'll take you shopping, or they'll pick up your groceries for you. Anything that lifts your burden a bit and gives you more time to take care of yourself. Critical. And I didn't do enough.
I think one of the things that I kind of think of, I think women go through this more than men, but I'm sure they go through it as well, is there's a sense of guilt of, I love this person, or I'm the only person that lives with them, and I have to do this, and they need me, and I don't have time for myself, and if I do, I feel guilty. So how do you get over that kind of mental guilt to say it's okay to ask for help, or to go and take a walk just for yourself, or whatever it is you need?
Well, here's the situation is that if you don't take care of yourself, often the caregiver gets worn out, their immune system goes down and gets shot, and then they get sick. And if you get sick and worn out and shot, or you, God forbid, have to be hospitalized or something like that, okay, what happens to your loved one who needs your care? What happens then? So the point is that by caring for yourself, you don't feel guilty, because by caring for yourself, you're caring for your loved one as well. Because you're a better caregiver and a healthier and a stronger caregiver to deal with the stress and the everyday challenges of caregiving when you take better care of yourself. I learned that lesson the very hard way. And if I can spare anyone from going through that, I'm here to say that emphatically, underline it 3 times. Take care of yourself to be a better caregiver. You're doing the right thing for yourself and your loved one.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully said. And like you just mentioned, there's a lot of places to reach out for help, even if you're not sure exactly what you need. There are people that can help you with that. I want to switch gears a little bit, as we're kind of talking about mindset anyway. You had been part of a book that you got to write with Jack Canfield. For those that don't know, he is one of the co-creators of Chicken Soup for the Soul, which is what you might know him for, but he's done many other things. Do you want to show your book? Let's show it.
I happen to have another prop, right? He's also known for the success principles. And I started out a number of years ago taking a lot of his online classes and everything. And he's just fantastic. I mean, I've learned so much from him. I'm going through my own transition and reinvention. I've gone through a number of them, and I'm going through it again. And as a result, I heard from him, and I was given an opportunity to work with one of his agencies in Florida to do a chapter. And I had to apply, but based on my background, and I'll hold it up. It's called The Recipe for Success. Let me see if I do that right. There you go. The Recipe for Success. And I'm chapter 3. And I memorized. I wrote it. It was written in 2018, came out early in 2019. Okay. So my chapter was Inspired Success, Aligned from Within, Manifested Outside the Box, and Transformative by Design. And that's pretty much, that was my recipe for my life and my career. Okay. Is always, I just didn't do what everybody else did. And I learned by doing and trying things that I had certain gifts. And what I want to suggest to people is that you focus on what you like, what you don't like, what turns you on, what you're passionate about, because those are real clues about what you ought to be doing in your career if you're not already doing it. And so what I did was I looked into thinking about, what is it that got me going? And I recognized a couple of things. One is that I'm both creative and analytical, which also helped me obviously be a good student, because in just about every subject except gym. I took dance classes, and we talked about that. Dance classes overcome, that weakness. But okay, so I was strategic and analytical. I was strategic and tactical. I was creative. All of those things helped me do what I do now. I mean, I gave an example of how do I figure out the common ground. That's a perfect example of using all of my skills. And that's what someone can do. You need quiet time. You need to have a notepad next to you, and you need a lot of intuitive space. Okay. And internalizing and thinking about, there's no right or wrong. It's just you talking to yourself, and your intuitive self is very wise and actually knows you better than your day-to-day person knows you. It sounds weird and disconnected, but it's not. You just have to take the time to listen to it. And when you do, and you're saying, I'm not sure about what I want to do in my career. I'm not sure what I'm passionate about. Begin. What do you like? What are your dislikes? What are your strengths? Be honest. What are your weaknesses? I mean, those are the kinds of things that when you answer those kinds of questions, then you begin to define what you should be doing with your life. And I think that that's part of what the process I went through to understand it. And I mentioned the book. In order to write the book, I could have gone a lot of different paths in writing it. And I decided to go back to, growing up and what is it about me that was successful and why? And how did I go from there to where I am now? And that's what I wrote about in my chapter.
I want to, just because I definitely agree with you, I want to relate it to a little bit as we're recording this in December 2020. This has been a very tough year, right, for many people.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
You have people that, one of the many things people are struggling with is financial issues. Many people lost their jobs in March. They still don't have a job. How do you kind of find the balance between, let me be clear on what it is that I want to do, and I need money right now? How do you kind of, keep those two in check and be able to find what you need to be able to survive and then be able to thrive?
Okay. Well, first of all, you have to be realistic and remain positive, because all you can count on is change. Now, this year is a dramatic example of change with a capital C, okay? But I've gone through so many changes and losses. I lost my parents. I lost my brother. I lost my husband. I could have gone through this horrible spiral. And yeah, I was depressed for a while, but I worked it through. So when you're going through this, you have a choice. You have control over what you think, what you tell yourself, and that inner voice, that critical inner voice. And you can wallow in woe is me, or you can say, okay, this is the situation. Now, when Bill was in his, I'd say, last year or so, I couldn't do client work, but I needed to make money and I needed to focus a little bit. So I took a part-time job at a policy research organization in Princeton, and it worked out beautifully for me. And I did it. Actually, I did it for about a little over I think 18 months or 14 months or something like that. I needed to do that. And it was also great because for 4 hours a day, it was perfect. And I love my analytical stuff, but I could also focus on something, leave the job, go back the next day. And it was very flexible. The hours were flexible. So, you have to think outside the box. Now's the perfect time to think outside the box. Okay, there are lots of job opportunities that could be part-time and temporary. They're looking for that. Like I think of Amazon and other companies like that. They're looking, and they're hiring. They're looking for those kinds of. So don't limit yourself to my career and how I define myself and my job title. Yeah. Okay, update your resume. Another thing, don't just do your resume and send it into the black hole called the internet. Okay, because that's what everybody does. Okay, and then wait. You're not going to get a whole lot of traction from that. And I never did that. So what I would suggest you do is begin researching, go online, read, take some courses. If you maybe you have some skills that you could do an online class, and here I am talking about it, and I'm thinking about doing that and have trepidations because I haven't done it yet, but I'm thinking about it. Okay, so and I'm learning. I'm doing this is, by the way, everybody, this is my first podcast. Okay, my virgin podcast. I want you to know.
We had your friends setting it up. It's great. Yes, so we try everything.
I have 2 people in the other room that are holding my hand. They're really and they're here supporting me and checking the lighting and everything. I am so low tech, and I'm learning all this stuff. But the fact is that I'm a perfect example of how to shift gears. And I don't like the word pivot. I don't like words when they're overused, but it's a shifting of thoughts and actions. And, take a part-time job because, hey, listen, I've lived in this house and I work out of my home. I've lived here for 36 years, but it's now a seller's market. for the first time, and I don't even remember. And I've been thinking about selling this house. Now's the time. So I've been working day and night on top of everything else I'm trying to do. And I'm getting my house ready for sale because it's timely. So I made that decision. And that's what I'm suggesting to everyone is think about the situation and the reality of it. How can you capitalize on it? So you're not victimized by it. Don't just wallow and sleep and drink and eat and take drugs and disappear. I know that I know that pot is legal, and in some states, and that's okay. I'm not faulting any of that, but don't get into this fog and stop acting and thinking, because now's a great time to take certain action to prepare for a better year next year. And that's what I would suggest is that, and now that I'm talking about what the process with my house, and now I'm showing it. I have friends who have been thinking about it, and they're going, oh my God, I'm getting my house ready for sale. It's the thing is that, and there is this reticence, and I guess it's maintaining the status quo, the comfort zone. I have an opinion about that term, the comfort zone. Okay, so it keeps shifting because as change happens, you don't stay in the same zone, but you can shift and get new skills, and then you get comfortable doing that. Like right now, I'm talking to you. I'm doing my first podcast. I had trepidations, and my friends that are in the background listening and watching know. I said, I'm not at my best now. I'm in the middle of, I've had no sleep. I'm getting my house ready for sale. This is not going to be a good time for me. Maybe I shouldn't do this, but here I am doing it. Now I'm saying, oh my God, can I do more of these? I'm now shifting into a new comfort zone. So that's the idea is, and Jack Canfield is full of that kind of thing. And he's also, he's been pushing me because he knows that I have a lot of fears. I had to battle self-esteem issues for a lot of my life. I won't go into it except that there was some abuse in my family. Not my parents, but I had a grandmother who really lived with us and gave me a hard time. So I had to overcome a lot. And Bill was my protector. He's gone. And I've been having to work through that and face this. And a lot of it's alone. I know this one hair is in my eye like that, At least I don't have a fly on my head, right? God forbid, Okay, I sprayed bug spray just to keep that from happening. That was really embarrassing.
I just have to say, well, first I wanted to show, Lori says you're doing amazing, Teri. And, I think, Teri, when I had met you once before, your genuineness, your realness is what's so wonderful about you. And I think, what you're showcasing here, there's so many people feeling, at many times in their life, but certainly now during this pandemic, of whether they're having financial issues, relationship issues, health issues, whatever, there is this kind of like mental, emotional weight. But everybody's going through it in some way. And like you said, it's kind of just shifting. There's always going to be change. How do you kind of adjust to that? Which brings me to, how do you define success? And is it different today than maybe how you defined it a while ago?
Okay. Well, the main thing and my major passion in life, and it started early on, and I my story, and I have another prop, and that's how it began, and I'll read it in a minute. But success to me is about making the world better by making a difference for others, and making a good living and a career out of it, and having a ripple effect way beyond you and your ego. Be about adding value, be about service, and you're going to create a win-win-win-win-win, and it's just going to open up like all kinds of doors. And that's what happened to me. And so I would say is, find your passion. And even if you have to do temporary things, take small steps. That's what I do all the time. But if you take the small steps, you keep making progress. Just don't get stuck and give up. Never give up. Okay, what I've learned is what doesn't kill you transforms you. So never, ever give up. Okay, definition of success. Quick story. I know we don't have a lot of time, but okay, so I'm graduating from 8th grade, and I'm getting ready to start high school. And I was a coffeeholic. I still am. I love coffee.
In 8th grade?
Yeah, I know. Well, my mother, may she rest in peace, and I love you, Mom. I love you. And we had this okay. So my mother loved coffee.
Continue. Go ahead.
Both of my parents worked. My mother loved coffee. When I was little, I loved the smell of it. But I drink my milk because that makes you strong. Your bones are strong. Little kids have to drink milk. But Mom, it smells so good. Can I have some? So she put a couple tablespoons in and made me coffee milk. And then she kept putting a little more in. As I got older, she put a little more in. And then after a point, I had my first whole cup of coffee. And oh my God, I've been addicted ever since. Okay, so that's the story. And my mother, of course, knew it. And she's saying, she's going to be putting in long hours and she's going to study and she's going to do all this. So I got from my parents, I got a coffee mug. You can't see it. But on it, it has a rainbow on it. Okay, and it has a definition of success, and this is in 8th grade, but this stayed with me. It's a quote from Emerson: "To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life," I always get emotional with this, and I'm not going to cough. "To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded." Okay, I get choked up now, and I got choked up the first time I read it when it was on a coffee mug, and it was from my mom. And I know my parents were always about helping others and about, they wanted to instill those kinds of values. And that stayed with me because that was the first definition of success that really resonated with me. And I said, oh my God, I want that kind of life, and I want to make a difference, not just for one person, but for many. And I get emotional when I think back. If I died, I say this to people, if I died, I have my legacy. I don't have to work at it anymore. And a legacy, leave behind and make a difference. From all the projects, from prostate cancer awareness and the caregiver community and the cancer community, tobacco control, Clean Indoor Air Act, and all the other work that I've done that has made a difference, and it's been part of my life and career, I've touched millions of lives. And it's not about bragging. It's because I go, oh my God, I get goosebumps. And it makes a difference. And I can share one story real quick about caring to help others. I met someone, I'm on the board of Grounds for Sculpture, an organization founded by Stuart Johnson in Hamilton, New Jersey. And we were talking about networking, and I was actually helping them create a corporate advisory council, but also a community advisory council. And we had a meeting with a woman who heads up the they have organizations in every county for seniors, and she was head of the New Jersey organization. Okay, it's New Jersey Organization of Area Agencies on Aging, and we were talking about we were swapping information about our backgrounds. And then I said, and I worked on a project, and it was a training program called Caring to Help Others. And she goes, the red binder. And I said, yeah. She goes, I use that all the time. That's my Bible. I train volunteers all the time. And I went, it's working. I'm sorry if I blew out a mic or anything, but it was like, oh my God. I said, and I took her hand and I said, thank you. I'm so glad to know that it really makes a difference and you're using it. You don't know, you made my year to know that I had that kind of impact. And what I would say is that's success. That's real success.
I agree. I think so many people again think success is fame or being on a list or being making so much money or a top thing. But I agree with what you're saying and that quote. I think when I talk about this podcast show I've done for 6 years, over 500 episodes, I always talk about my whole goal is to have people feel heard, seen, and cared for. And if one person feels that way, then I've done my duty. And I think, like you said, to have one person say you've helped. So not only personally have you had that, but professionally is huge. And not only is it successful because it's helped others, but it's because something that you cared about and you're passionate about. So I think that's a beautiful definition of success. I love that. And I, again, congratulate you on having achieved that in your own way. If people want to learn more about you or they want to connect with you, is there a good place that they could do that?
Well, they can learn more about me. As I said, I'm in transition and reinventing myself. So I'm also working on my website. But through LinkedIn, I'm Teri P. Cox, MBA, and it's with Teri. There are lots of us, but I'm distinguished by Teri P. Cox, MBA. And also, they can reach me by my email, which is tcox@coxcompartners.com. And that's tcox@COXCOMM, partners, the word partners.com. And I'd love to hear from, and if there are questions, if you have any questions, you need some more support, you want some answers, I might be able to help you with something, please reach out to me. I'd be glad to help.
The last question I like to ask all of my guests, Teri, is what is one word or quote or mantra that you try to live by every single day?
Wow. Well, one mantra I've already shared is what doesn't kill you transforms you, never give up. And that really is a mantra. Another one is, in order to be inspired, you also need gratitude. You need to be grateful. There's a lot of loss and a lot of people going through such hardship now. But rather than focusing on like the glass is half full or half empty, okay? Think about all the blessings you have in your life. You have a roof over your head. If you have enough food, if you have the basics, if you have friends and family who love you, if you have your health, don't take any of that for granted. But be grateful and recognize what you have, and also recognize your gifts and what you've done already, what you've accomplished already, instead of wallowing in the negativity. Try to look at it as an opportunity and something positive. And that's what I would say is gratitude. Gratitude and hope. Don't ever give either of them up, no matter how dark things seem now. There's hope, and everything, even what we're going through now, will change. And it's already changing. We know that the vaccines are going to be coming, and what's going on now will not be forever. Nothing ever is. All you can count on is change. But how you respond to change makes all the difference.
What a fabulous way to finish our conversation, Teri. I am just so grateful that you've been here. I'm so proud of the work that you've done for others, for your family, your loved ones, for those around you, but also just, again, you doing it for yourself, and excited for kind of this next chapter for you personally and professionally. So I thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. It's been a delight. And now that I've gotten this out of the way, I'm looking forward to doing more podcasts. This is a great opportunity. So thank you so much. And you did a great job. I told you I did a radio show in the mid-'70s in Pittsburgh, and now I'm on this side. You did a fabulous job of bringing these things out in me, and I'm glad that I could share this. And I hope I inspired and helped some people that were watching.
Yeah, I thank you so much. Again, I want to thank Senior Care Services of Greater Princeton and also the sponsors of tonight's episode, Wells Fargo Advisors, Kathy and Mike Castellano, Mrs. G Appliances, Aunt Teri's Event Planning and Consulting, Glen Eagle Advisors, and Surety Title Company. And for those of you watching on the Senior Care Services page, we are doing these again next month, January 13th, the same time and place. It'll be a Wednesday at 7 p.m. We have a couple who talk about how their life changed through laughing yoga. So you don't want to miss that. And if you want to learn more about Senior Care Services of Greater Princeton, you can go to their website at seniorcareservicesgp.org. And if you want to learn more about this show, Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things, you can check out the podcast Facebook page with the same name, or you can listen on any podcast platform, including iTunes, Spotify, or SoundCloud. I want to thank you all so much for listening and watching. I hope this created a sense of inspiration and helps you to live a great life and age gracefully.